We hear a lot of businesses these days try to embrace sustainability. And when they try to embrace sustainability, the thing we usually hear, the metric they usually talk about is that of carbon emissions. But when you look at the entire thing, you realize that carbon is just a tip of the iceberg when we are talking about sustainability and co. And that's what I'll discuss today with Christophe Girardier. He's an EU policy advisor and he's founder of Glimpact. Today, we'll talk about a couple of things. We'll talk about ESG, which is environmental, social, and government. We'll talk about how modern organizations are redefining what it means to make change and to make an impact, a positive impact on the environment. So, welcome to GreenTech Pulse. And as we start, can you share your journey going from business consulting and how you ended up in environmental impact assessment and consulting?
Good morning, Peter. Thank you to invite me in your program. Yes, when I speak about where I come from and why I now focus all my attention and activity on, let's say, the stake of the ecological transition, which is in fact the solution for the ecological crisis. So I have worked on the strategic consulting area, and I had the very important, and I was lucky to be part of this very important and structuring initiative of the European Commission, which name is Single Market for Green Products. And the purpose of this initiative, which started in 2014, was to elaborate a new methodology based on the science in order to answer to two questions, very easy question. First, and this question is very interesting in the existing context. So the two questions is the following. First one, what is environmental footprint of product and organization? How we measure, how we define this concept of environmental footprint? And second question, how to measure it with a rigorous and a scientific method. So this was the purpose of this initiative, on which I was part because I was asked by the European Commission to be part of the steering committee of this initiative. I spent 4 years on that
Well,
because I jumped the initiative in 2015, and at the end of the initiative was elaborate two methods, which name is PEF and OEF method. PEF is product environmental footprint. OEF is organization environmental footprint. And it was for me an enormous scientific asset in order to really create the condition of the ecological transition of the industry. And it is during this initiative at the end that with my co-founder, which name is Michael Holmes, we decided to say that this enormous scientific asset will be nothing if we don't take a technology to make accessible this methodology to everybody, not only and especially the industrial player on the world, not only to measure the environmental footprint of product and organization, but more than that, to identify the right and good leverage in order to reduce it. So here is my origin, and I created the company that I am the happy co-founder and CEO, which name is Glimpact. Glimpact is the technology that we created to make an access with an easy way through the internet to this scientific asset.
okay. So that's actually interesting. Going from consulting with the single market for green products and going fully into the field. So now, when you've looked at all these things, I know you mentioned things like the product environmental footprint and organizational environmental footprint. Looking at everything, At what moment did you realize that just carbon was not enough to measure environmental impacts of an organization?
This is a great question because it was the origin of all what I do today. Okay. So the origin of that is this wonderful initiative on which there was, let's say, approximately 1,000 people, and especially scientific, from the scientific, European and worldwide scientific community, NGOs, and also some players industry. And at the end of this works, the science said that when you speak about the environmental crisis, the environmental crisis is not only climate. Everybody in the world, including now, said that environment mean CO2 emission, which is at the origin of the global warming. That everybody say environmental means carbon footprint, but it's not true. And I can say something more than that. If the humanity will achieve this big stake to stop the elevation of the temperature, the worldwide temperature, under the 1.5 degree, which is in conformity with the Paris Agreement, the humanity will not be saved. Because the environmental crisis is a lot of different aspects. Probably this concept which summarizes very well what I will say now, which is the 9 planetary boundaries. On the 9 planetary boundaries, there is not only CO2 emission, there is biodiversity, there is water, there is pollution in the atmosphere, which is not CO2 emission only. So during this initiative, we scientists, I realized that the environmental crisis is not climate, only it's systemic. And what is this different dimension which must be taken into account is the following. You have to take into account, of course, of the environmental footprint, but environmental footprint is one of the 16 impact categories of the humanity on the planet. And this method that the European Union elaborate aims to take into account these 16 impact categories. So if I can give you some concrete thing, so CO2 emission, which is carbon footprint, but there is water use of fossil resources, use of mineral resources. Mineral resources is the rare minerals which are in your computers that you are watching, Peter, at this moment, which is very rare resources. But there is also land use. There is also pollution in the atmosphere, in the river, in the ocean, which is not linked to the climate change. This is other aspect. But we have to add also the toxicity. We call the human toxicity, but the ecotoxicity. Ecotoxicity is pollution, the toxicity on the ground, on the river, on the sea. So 16 impact categories, which mean the environmental footprint of product or organization. And the method define what we call characterization method for each of these 16 impact categories in order to measure, because to measure CO2 emission is not the same than to measure water use, for example, So there was in the method a characterization method for each impact categories, and then there was a score which weight all these results on these 16 impact categories in order to identify what we call the aggregate score. And this aggregate score can allow to measure the environmental footprint, the real environmental footprint, based on the science of all product or all company. So I realized that the focus today, and it's interesting because during your program, the world continue to speak about only carbon footprint. This is a mistake for two reasons. First, because carbon footprint is, of course, a very important stake, but not the only one. The second, which is more concrete, if and I realize that if you measure only carbon footprint without watching what impact could have your operation on carbon footprint on other impact categories, you can have what we call in science the impact transfer from one impact to another. So let me tell you an example. You know, for example, organic food. Okay, so organic food is great, but it's not enough to define the environmental footprint of any vegetable or fruit. Okay, why? Because organic food means you can't have in this food use of chemical pesticide. But you use, if you don't use chemical pesticide, you can use other pesticide. You have also the stake of water. So if I take two tomatoes, which is organic, if one use a hot place to make the practice, agricultural practice, or use more water, those aspects is not taken into account in the organic. So you can have two tomatoes who come from organic culture who could have a very, very, very different impact. So organic food is good, but not enough. You can have organic agricultural practice which is bad for the environment and other good. And what we say in kind of example of impact transfer, you can have organic food, but using more and more and more water. And globally speaking, you replace an impact by another. That is why you need the systemic vision. This is a wonderful revelation for me that, and I come back to my sentence at the beginning, environmental crisis is not only climate, it's systemic. And if the humanity don't take into account all these 16 impact categories, we will not survive in one in the future. The planet will survive, but without us.
Yeah, the planet is actually really resilient. So now you've mentioned this product environmental footprint, which you say gives each product an aggregate score based on the 16 categories you talked about, such as the water use of fossil fuels, use of minerals, toxicity, and co. So now, I know you've probably worked with a couple of companies who have moved from just looking at the carbon footprint to looking at the PF, the product's environmental footprint. So for any of them that has done that, have you seen anyone that has been surprised by additional impacts they recognized moving to this new framework you talk about?
Yes, of course, because it's interesting your question because this method is a little disruptive in the vision of us and all company regarding the stake of the respect of the environmental crisis. Because, for example, this method not only open you to your real impact, not only in carbon footprint, but all the impact categories. But it can also allow you to know where is the real sources of your impact, which is not necessarily what you want. What you know. Let's say the shirt you have today, Peter, your shirt, I don't know, it probably made by with cotton or polyester, probably cotton when I see that. Okay, do you know that if I take the global environmental footprint of your shirt, what is considered today as a wonderful, very important impact, which is the transport from the place where the product is created, for example, in China, Vietnam, in other places in the United States or Europe. And a lot of people think if my apparel comes from a long way, this is not good for environment. But
Yeah.
the reality is not that. The reality is that the transport from the place of manufacturing of the clothes to the place where you buy the clothes is less than 10% of the impact. 90% of the impact is two things. First, the condition of production of the raw material, for example, cotton, if your shirt is in cotton, first. And second, certain and not all industrial process, and in particularly dyeing, knitting. Okay, so the dyeing process, only this process, could be between 30 to 40% of the entire footprint of all apparel.
Wow.
But the transport is very low, and also what we call the finishing process. If you have someone in United or in UK who said, "Hey, my shirt is done in London," but we don't care of that. The problem is where come from the cotton on which was done this shirt. This is so much important. So you can have a shirt which is sell by it is environmental friendly shirt because it's done in my near London or near Paris.
Yeah.
If this is done by cotton made in Vietnam, China, or other with awful condition, the fact that it will be manufactured in your country don't mean anything. So there is surprising. Let me give you the example of one of our biggest customer, which is the trademark Lacoste. You know Lacoste
Oh,
trademark.
yeah.
It's a word.
Yeah.
Okay? They realize, say, before using this method with us, there was, as a lot of players in the fashion industry, they were sure that using organic cotton is great for environment. Not necessarily true. They realized with our approach, this approach, that their cotton was not a good one
Wow.
because using a lot of water. But it was organic. So what's this? This it was a very surprising thing. Okay, they were also surprised by the fact that transport is not a lot, except if you use a lot of plane. But if you use only boats, transport doesn't. So what's happened? They realized why their organic cotton was not good. We explained to them why it's not good. It was not good because of the agricultural practice of those cotton sources. Because in the environmental footprint of the cotton, the most important part is the agricultural practice. What's happened in the farm? So you know what they've done? They ask
Yeah.
us what must be done to have good organic cotton. They made a global sourcing all around the world to create a supply chain of organic cotton which meet these new orientations that we mentioned. So now Lacoste developed their own supply chain of cotton and optimize in a very high level the environmental footprint of their clothes. I can multiply example like that. This method, by his systemic approach, is a real disruptive because you identify the real stake of your environmental footprint, and more important, where you have to act on the good level, not the bad one, which usually is you have, let's say, two-thirds of industry who use a bad leverage without knowing that, and one-third who do the bad, who use the bad leverage, and they know that this is the the awful greenwashing. So this method gives you a new vision of the real stake of your environmental footprint and the good leverage swag. I can't stop this answer without suggesting to you and your auditor to use the free mobile application we have done, which name is My Glimpact. You
Okay.
can download on Apple or Google Play. This application was done by us
Mhm.
to educate all people to evaluate their own environmental footprint using this method. It was a kind of teasing we want to put and to put in the hand of all American, all English people and European people to a tool who can allow them to know their real impact for themselves. Okay? And it shows these 16 impact categories. And what is funny on this application, your environmental footprint is calculated in number of planets that will be needed if everybody do like you.
Ooh.
So please, Peter, try that. So yes, it's true. Company change their vision of environmental footprint through this method, and more than that, put the environmental performance at the heart of their development model, which is key if humanity want to solve this enormous problem, not only of climate change, but of the environmental crisis.
Okay. So you mentioned the My Glimpact Act, which I just opened on my app store here. And I
Good.
can see, yes, you can see it asks questions about your food, your transport, your housing, your devices, your goods. It also lets you scan barcodes of, okay, then I can see the example here, 6 planets.
Yeah. You have six seconds,
Yeah.
but you have to define because to be quick, the application proposed to select some usual profile, but Peter, you have to
Oh,
fill all the detail to have your own profile. You know,
hmm.
so if you take my example, if I can
Okay.
disclose that, I before my impact, I had 6 planets. Six. One of the origin of my 6 planet is that I have a car in Paris. And I realize that it is stupid to have a car in Paris. So I sell, I sell my car, okay? And now I use bicycle, sometimes taxi
Yeah.
if I am late, but common transport. Now I reduce from 6 to 2.7.
Whoa.
It's too much, but I spend from 6 to 2.7. And Peter, to be honest with you, it's very difficult everywhere in the world to be under one planet. Why?
Hmm.
We wanted not to judge any people, but to explain to them that unfortunately, the real responsible of the hotel crisis is not only citizen. There is three major responsible: the state, the companies, and the citizen. The citizen is probably less than 20% of the most important responsible is a political decision maker and company. It means that you know in Paris I sell my car, but I have a lot of public transport. But I was very in trouble with my a lot of friends which live not in Paris but in the campaign, and told
Yeah.
me that it's good for them because they have 2 cars, one for the children to go to school, and I explained to
Yeah.
them, your personal responsibility if there is no transport around you. But what is important, because the responsibility is not only on citizen, is to make it that everybody make what they could make without changing their life. If
Hmm.
everybody do significant thing on the different aspects, food, transport, your housing, and so on and so on, this will be enormous. Okay. In other words, things you could accept must be done. So is not acceptable could be continued. And in my case, it was not a big deal to sell my car. Now I live as good as before, better probably. I have no car. Okay, this is not possible everywhere. So it's a question of, and this application is another disruptive way to know where is the reality of the environmental footprint of us, but most in the company. You know where I live? I'm in a very beautiful apartment from Airbnb for my week in New York here. I don't know what is the way of having a hot atmosphere. You know, it is not my choice. So it
Yeah.
means that a lot of leverage is on the hand of political decision maker and companies.
Yeah, and I think with what you said, I'm actually scared to put my details in the app because I know I have a car outside. It's a V6 and I drive it like once or twice a week. Although I bought a bicycle last year, so I think that should.
But Peter, don't make like me. It was
Mhm.
awful to discover your real, but it's not a big deal. The number of planets of Jupiter could be important, does not matter. What's matter is what you will decide to reduce it. This is the most important. Okay, if you have 10 planets and you reduce to 8, it's wonderful. If you can reduce to 2, you will be a hero. Okay, and will the most important thing is to act in comparison of what you can accept. The ecological transition start by that, but don't. The citizens have to understand that it is not true when people say it is you're the responsible. No, you have part of the responsibility, but not all at all. So big responsibility, again, it's government, companies. And this is what we do with my company, Glimpact, using this method. And as you know, how you can imagine to change this world by making the ecological transition if we have not the same method to measure it. I use this metaphor, you know, when you take a plane, which is not good for environment, but you take a plane, you know, you go over different country and you are controlled, your plane will be controlled by different government
Yeah.
to give the direction to the plane. Imagine one time that the definition of altitude will be different for each country. Imagine. So nobody can imagine to have a different definition of altitude
Yeah.
in each country. This is the case in uh, in the environmental space. That is why European Union wanted to achieve this method and try to say that everybody have to use this method. And that is why European Union decided to to make mandatory this method for two major regulation which was adopted by European Union very recently in the context of the European Green Deal. You probably know the extra financial reporting regulation in Europe, which name is CSRD. This is a new regulation which was adopted in 2023. And there is another one which name is ESPR, Eco-Conception Sustainability Product Regulation, which is an enormous structuring legislation, which was adopted in last April, enter in force last July 2024. This regulation, Peter, will change the world of the industry because it will define for each product categories, starting by fashion industry, some eco-design requirement that all industry have to respect if they want to have an access to the European Union market. It is the first regulation with constraints. If you don't meet this requirement, you will be not allowed to sell your product in Europe. This is enormous. And this regulation use a scientific framework, which is a PEF method, to define this ecological eco design requirement. So it's show you that now European Union want to affirm one single methodological framework to define environmental footprint, so that not everybody decide of what is good for environment or not, what is green or not. You know.
Interesting. So I think that thing it said about the biggest responsibility going to the governments and the companies. While you were mentioning it, I remembered when plastic bags were banned in the UK, and everybody was it seemed chaotic, but all of a sudden now it's just so normal. You don't expect to be given plastic bags in the shop. You go with yours, or you buy one that you keep reusing, and so just one act by the government made a big difference. So now for the companies who have started measuring their impact using these product or organizational environmental footprints. What are some benefits, some unexpected benefits you've seen them discover when they start measuring their impact in this way?
Oh, very good question, because it's key. It's key. When I think about your question, I said that unfortunately, I don't believe the commitment of most of the community will do with the hand in our ass. I want to protect the planet and so on and so on. No, 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 no.
Yeah.
I know that they will do that if they will win more money than before. So we have
Yes.
to really realize that. I will dream to have this, my hand in my heart. I will change the world. No, no, no. We have. So your question is very important, because the question is behind that, is this approach could be an opportunity or a constraint for the company. And my conviction, and I see that for all our customers, this is an opportunity. And the reason why is that actually, if you restrict your vision of the footprint of your company, for example, to carbon footprint, in fact, you don't have okay, you can be very happy you have done your carbon footprint analysis, and so what? What you will do is that? Not nothing. Okay. For example, you sell chocolate. At the end, the carbon footprint analysis will say, don't make chocolate. So you disappear. You don't have a real key opportunity to reduce, to act on leverage to reduce your activity, the environmental footprint of your activity. So, coming back to your question, the systemic vision that I mentioned is true, more complex. But everybody have to know that environmental footprint is a serious question, because it's a threat of our of the purity of the humanity herself. So, what is important? What is important is that to accept this complexity, but through this complexity, this systemic vision, you identify the real key origin of your impact. But in the same time, you identify multiple places on which you can act according your own constraints, according your industrial constraint, economic constraint, or political constraint. And this is one of the big realities. The company realized that some, what we call the hotspot, it is the most important component which explain your environmental footprint, they can act on. Okay, let me give you the example of that I mentioned of Lacoste. They realized that if they change the sourcing of cotton, they could change dramatically their environmental footprint. But I can give you another example. It's a big company. which name is Puratos. Puratos is one of the leader of all the ingredients for patisserie, bakery, and chocolate. Okay, one to two croissant you buy everywhere in the world is done by their ingredient, and they realize that the key uh, action leverage they can use is not the packaging, which is less than 5% of all food, orbital food. They can act on the farm. And one of the biggest impact from them is chocolate. They have their own farmer of chocolate, of cacao beans, okay?
Yeah.
And this is 90% of them. So they identify through this method analysis which kind of practice have to be developed in all the place where they are. This is not complex to achieve, you know. It's just a question of which practice you have to do and how. So I mean that to answer to this question, yes, using this approach, using this scientific method, even it's complex, and that is why we create this Glimpact technology to make easier that you realize much more opportunity to act that you knew before this vision. And this is key because the most important thing I say to all companies is not your existing hotel footprint. I don't care. The most important thing is what is the origin of your footprint today and how you can reduce it by acting to the best leverage. And this method is also an acting wonderful tool, which is the most important thing. Okay, and I don't have any of our customers who have not done some significant thing to change radically
Wow.
their hotel footprint. Of course, some have constraints, but there is no constraint which can put a company in a situation to make nothing. No constraint. But according to your specific activity, you will act in different way. This
Yeah.
is the origin of the ecological transition. For example, if I come back to United States, you know that there is a new administration will come, the Trump administration. Trump, which is
Yeah.
among the political decision maker who think that global warming does not exist. So uh, it could be a problem, but in fact not. Why? Because in United States there is no law on that, and you know the big act of the Biden administration, which is the ERA, Inflation Reduction Act,
Yeah.
which was presented by Biden administration as a very important sustainability measure. Is not true. This era was better economic tool to convince company, and especially European one, to make their business in the United States round, but
Yeah.
no real definition of the footprint. But imagine that now IRA will use this scientific framework to be sure that the money which is done in the end of this company using the IRA program, they will have to demonstrate that they are green, not just
Yeah.
declare I'm green, that I can have the money because I'm in the ground of the United States. This is the subject of the European Union with this method, so that we have a real key proof, yeah, key proof for company to have this money and redirect the investment on the real company who can demonstrate that they act and quantify the effect of the act they have done. This is the most important thing to achieve this ecological transition. If not, ecological transition will be a joke.
Yeah. Okay, so now you've mentioned a couple of regulations, the ERA just now. Then you mentioned the CSRD, which is the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, and the ESPRO, eco design for sustainable products regulation. So for businesses, especially those who might be under the regulatory ambit of the European Commission, which you do a lot of work with, are there any other environmental regulations they should be preparing for or expecting coming up?
Oh, this is have to be prepared, and it's at this time it's too not too late. There is nothing too late, but they have to do that. Uh, you are right. Those regulation, the first one, which is the extra financial reporting, the CSRD directive, is mandatory for some of companies, the biggest one, who have significant operation in Europe. The ESPR will be mandatory for everybody, not question of size of the company. It will start in 2016 by textile industry, by furniture, by cosmetic, and globally chemical consumption.
Yeah.
But this legislation aims to cover all the major industry in the fast-moving goods. Okay, but to answer to your question, yes, all companies who have significant operation in Europe, all around the world, okay, from UK to US, from China to India, because if they want to have an access to the European market, they will have to be prepared.
Yeah.
So it is exactly the purpose of what we do. We want the company to be prepared on that, but as you mentioned, Peter, they have to be prepared because this will be an obligation. But they have to be prepared not only for that, but to be part of those companies which I consider as responsible, which means companies who accept their footprint. They know where it comes from, and they act in the... So I think that the future success of company will be for those who will put the environmental performance at the heart of their economic model. Those companies will succeed. So, in other words, making the ecological transition is not only a constraint, it's not only a society obligation, it's a real condition for the future success. I think that all companies have to know that. Not only a question of society, it's a question of economy. Who will survive in this market? The company will have environmental footprint as a key component of their economic model.
Interesting. So now, going back to the Glimpact app, I've actually gone through as we were talking. It's actually very useful, and I think once we're done, I'll put in my details, fill in the questionnaire, see how see how many planets I need. So, for the Glimpact app, what should we expect in the future for the app? What new features? What more would it cover, and what more would it be able to do going forward?
So at this time, for the starting, because it's a very new application, we launched this in the United States in last July. Okay, and we have a Crunch article, and we were very proud of that. Crunch, your colleague of Crunch, make a wonderful article on that, explaining this application. So to answer your question, first of all, actually, my company have two kind of target. Of course, the company target on which we make for them our Glimpact technology application for helping them to reduce the environmental footprint of their product or their organization. And of course, to be prepared through these two regulations that we mentioned together. But the other target is you, Peter, your family, your friend, me, everything. Actually, we want to make the citizen aware of the reality of the environmental footprint, this systemic vision. So this application, you can do what you want, but we don't disclose anything that you will see in the application. You just see, you can save your profile just because we want to be sure that people will know, imagine that we will use this application for bad purpose.
Yeah.
So the first step is to have people aware of their environmental footprint. Now, the next step, we will propose to the user of the application to create their account in order to make their plan, save their plan. And what we want to do, and we had a price in the United States for this thing. We want to create the community of people like you, like me, who have decided not to be under one planet, but to make all what must be done and acceptable for each on making an action plan to reduce from 6 planets to 2, for 3 planets to 1.5, and so on and so on. So we want to create this community all around the world with a reporting that we will do to everybody. Say, hey, all together, we have done a reduction, a global reduction of the total crisis of this amount. It's few at the beginning, but it could be enormous. And what we want to say is, all together, we have done a part of the trip to win this enormous stake of the ecological transition. Now it's you, company, government, to make the other side. So this is what we want to do, and we also want to help small companies, because actually we are working with big companies, but we want to work with small one, so that every company, small, could make this in their mobile, as because you, Peter, me, we are a small company, which is our household, okay, and you are part of the contribution of the ecological crisis.
Yeah.
You have to know where you can act, if it's acceptable for you, and how to act. But you have to be a good citizen who can discover that they will not vote for someone who don't take into account the reality of the environmental crisis. In fact, my Glimpact is a political tool to put the people aware of the reality, so that they can become citizen which is aware and will vote for who they want. But knowing that, people, I don't put a name in the table, but you understand what I mean. All political decision maker who considers that environmental crisis is not true, we don't have to take into account that. This will be not possible in the future. So this application is, in fact, our society contribution to help citizens to be part of this ecological transition, not by judging them, but by giving the knowledge of the reality of their environmental footprint and orientation in order to reduce it.
Amazing. Amazing. So I think for listeners who have listened to this conversation, they've enjoyed the conversation, but they want to learn more. They want to connect with you. They want to read. You've written a lot of papers on this topic and related topics online. They want to read those papers. They want to implement this framework in their companies, or they want to download this My Glimpact app. What's the best way for them to, or what are the best ways for them to reach you?
Oh, they just go to, so in the application, so they put in Google Play or Apple Store Glimpact, My Glimpact, or Glimpact Scan. Okay, there is two applications this time. And for companies, they can go to www.glimpact, like globalimpact.com, and they will have a lot of information. We have, and there is a part that I suggest to you, Peter. In the glimpact.com website, you have a lot of information, but you have another place what is news, where we try to take your shoes, Peter. It's a place where we make a summary of all articles which come from the ecological transition, not only us, there was different studies that we have done. I take part of the public debate in Europe and in United States. I make op-ed, in newspaper. So you can read this on the Spark News. And of course,
Yeah.
you can contact us and we will be glad to welcome all projects because I am among CEOs, which can surprise you, who is not only interested by our revenue, because our revenue is only to be independent of everybody, and especially
Yeah.
government. But my major objective is the level of reduction that Glimpact have contribute for this ecological transition. So in other words, we are a mission company who watch KPI, which is not only financial, which is more the level of environmental impact reduction,
Mm.
but not only carbon footprint, the systemic vision of the environmental impact of companies or products. This is our mission, and we want to be a company independent who can say these things to citizens, company, and government. For example, I am a French company and I am fighting against my own government, which don't want to respect the rule of the European Union, And if you
Yeah.
read my last op-ed, I said to my government, please, uh, don't make something which is not which is not compliant to the rule, because my government, unfortunately, considers that environmental labeling is something politic,
Mm.
and this is very important. In France, the existing government will just change, so I hope it will change. Considers that the environmental labeling must be favorable for French product. No, no, no. The labeling must be as your doctor. When you go to your doctor, you see your scanner. He will not uh, change the scanner to be sure that he will say to you, you have nothing.
Yeah.
The analysis rule is made through science, and the result of this scientific approach could be used for policy at government level, but not making the politic on the method in order to have exactly what you want. No, no, it does not work like
Yes.
this. So we are as independent to remind to our government, no, the ecological labeling must be based on science with a rigorous and independent method. Then you can act, not before.
Amazing. All right. So I think I've learned a lot from this today about, especially about the product environmental framework, new ways to calculate impact. And for listeners who want to continue this conversation, like you heard him say, can go on glimpact.com. That's glimpact.com. You can check on the Play Store for Android or the App Store for Apple for the My Glimpact or the Glimpact Scan apps, and use them. Check your footprint, check your impact, check how many planets, and work towards reducing that. So thank you so much, Christophe, for coming on GreenTech Pulse
Thank you,
today.
Peter. I was so glad to discuss with you. Thank you for your question. And I think this subject is key for the future of our humanity. And you know that youth people who watch your program, I'm sure they are in agreement with that.
Yeah, thank you so much. And for the listeners, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, share it with someone else who would find, who will learn something from it or who is interested in it. And